Hey everyone, Israel is currently in a war against the terror organization Hamas, and we know how hard it can be to keep up with all the news. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of the latest developments out of Israel, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review. And the Biden administration is reportedly set to announce sanctions against an IDF battalion in the coming days in a move that has caught Jerusalem by surprise. This, as the U.S. House of Representatives voted by an overwhelming majority to pass a $26 billion aid package to Israel. All the details in the following report. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is reportedly expected to announce sanctions against the IDF Netzach Yehuda battalion in the next few days, according to a report by Axios. The Netzach Yehuda battalion was initially established as a special military unit for ultra-Orthodox, but over the years also included right-wing youth who were not enlisted in other IDF units. If the sanctions are put in place, it would mark the first time the U.S. government would impose sanctions on an Israeli military unit. According to the report, the move is a result of alleged human rights violations against Palestinians in Judea and Samaria. They would prohibit the transfer of U.S. military aid to the battalion and would prevent its soldiers from taking part in training with the U.S. military and receiving American funding. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to the report and said such a move at a time when Israeli soldiers are fighting the monsters of terror, the intention to impose sanctions was the height of absurdity and a moral low. He added that in recent weeks he has been working against the imposition of sanctions on Israeli citizens, including in his conversations with senior American government officials, and said that his government would act by all means against these moves. And meanwhile, the United States House of Representatives voted on Saturday with broad bipartisan support to pass a $95 billion package, providing security assistance to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The bill includes nearly $61 billion in aid for Ukraine, while Israel would receive $26 billion, including some $9.1 billion, which is geared for humanitarian needs, including for Gaza. The vote for aid to Israel passed by an overwhelming majority of 366 to 58 against. The legislation will now proceed to the Senate, where it's expected to pass the Democratic majority, and then to the White House for President Biden to sign into law. And speaking of aid to Israel, last Saturday night, while Iranian drones and missiles were still on their way in an unprecedented attack on Israel, Israel Bonds initiated a special worldwide campaign in support of the Jewish state. Since 1951, Israel Bonds has generated over $52 billion in worldwide sales to help in the building and development of every sector of Israel's economy, enabling Israel's great achievements, including shooting down this first-ever assault by Iran. And so joining us now is Dani Naveh, President and CEO of Israel Bonds. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So firstly, could you share with us how investments through Israel Bonds support the state of Israel and why people should invest now given the current security situation?
Yeah, I would do that by referring to the last weekend. Israel Air Force great success in defending the state of Israel from the Iranian attack is probably a result of decades of preparations and planning in technology, human resources, the military. And Israel Bonds, during the years, has played an integral part in giving the state of Israel the financials that enable that preparation and planning. So every Israel Bonds investor can take pride by knowing that you played a role in achieving that great success during the last weekend.
And let's talk also about October 7th. What has Israel Bonds been able to do to help support Israeli society after these murderous attacks?
Since October 7th, we started a special campaign of support for the state of Israel at war. And I can tell you that we have achieved enormous and very impressive results. We have raised since October 7th around $3 billion globally for the state of Israel, which is almost three times our annual results during the years prior to October 7th. So the Israeli economy, as we know, support the war efforts, the civilian and the military ones, and Israel Bonds plays an important part in providing the state of Israel the financial that it needs to face its adversaries. And if we take a look at next week, with your permission, so we are going to say at the Haggadah, "V'higadat lebincha bayom hahu," you shall tell your children. And I would like to say it in a different way. Looking ahead, our children and maybe grandchildren will ask us, during those days, dark days for the state of Israel, what you did for the state of Israel at risk. And if you are an Israel bonds investor, you can proudly will be able to say, I provided the state of Israel, our beloved Jewish homeland, the funds, the financials to support Israel and to make it more secure and safe.
And so for those thinking of getting involved, I mean, what are some of the current investment opportunities?
Well, there are great opportunities today. If you go just to israelbonds.com, and if you don't have an account, you can open an account. If you have already an account, you can just make a purchase. And we have strong yields that can bring you on most of our products more than 5% yields. So you can secure Israel with very strong rates these days. So it's not just an investment, which is very important to support the state of Israel, but it's also a very strong and steady fixed income as part of your portfolio.
You know, as you've mentioned, there's a major increase in investments worldwide post October 7th. I mean, why do you think that is? And what do Israel bonds symbolize for them?
I think that for many people, it symbolizes that at this time, the state of Israel does not stand alone. And the best and the most powerful and direct way to support the state of Israel with billions of dollars of financial requirements following the war is by making such an investment in Israel bonds. And every investment is important. Every investment can make an impact. So I call upon each and every one of you to make an investment today in Israel bonds, and by that express your support for the Jewish homeland.
And so how can our viewers, people watching, invest in Israel today?
It's very simple. You can do it online. If you already have an Israel Bonds account, you can just go to israelbonds.com and make a purchase. If you don't have an account, you can go to israelbonds.com, open an account, and following that, make a purchase. And we have a variety of bonds, variety of products, variety of maturities. As I've said, today you can get on most of Israel Bonds products, you can get more than 5% yields. So it's very simple, very easy, and you can do it today.
All right, Dani Naveh, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, and Chag Sameach.
The U.S. Senate has passed with an overwhelming majority a $95 billion aid package to support Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The bill specifically allocates $26 billion to Israel in support of its right to self-defense in the fight against the Islamic Republic of Iran and its terror proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah. Let's take a closer look at what happened on Capitol Hill.
On Tuesday, the U.S. Senate passed a long-awaited $95 billion aid package to support democratic allies of the United States, including Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel.
This national security bill is one of the most important measures Congress has passed in a very long time to protect America's security and the security of Western democracy.
The Senate approved 4 bills package as one with a vote of 79 to 18. Approved $61 billion to Ukraine, $26 billion to Israel, and $8.12 billion to Taiwan. It also includes a provision that would demand the sale of TikTok to a non-adversarial nation, as well as targeted sanctions on the Islamic Republic officials. Of the $26 billion earmarked for Israel, $17 billion will go directly to wartime assistance, with another $9 billion going to humanitarian relief for the people of Gaza.
When Iran-backed terrorists invaded the Jewish state on October 7th, to slaughter innocent Israelis, I warned that the world would watch closely for signs that American leadership was actually weakening Our enemies have tested whether the arsenal of democracy is, in fact, built to endure. Well, tonight, the Senate will send a clear message.
The bill, which has bipartisan support in the House and Senate, is expected to be signed into law today by U.S. President Biden.
And as Israel is facing rising tensions from not only Iran's proxies, but Iran itself, Israel is forced to make challenging decisions on all fronts. Joining us now is Director of the International Institute of Counterterrorism, Colonel Miri Eisen. Colonel Eisen, thank you for joining us today. I'd like to start
Always a pleasure.
I'd like to start with Iran. Why do you think there's been a delay on the attack in Iran? ABC reported that it was cancelled twice. Is this related to developments in Rafah? What's being prepared there?
Israel has never said that we would directly attack Iran. These are decisions that are not automatic. Iran openly attacked Israel. We're all aware of that. The Israeli response is a combination of deterrence against Iran, and part of that deterrence is also the international coalition against Iran. So this isn't a situation that there was a decision that was canceled to attack. Rather, it's looking at all the different elements that will isolate Iran, put it where it should be, the pariah state of the world.
So as days go on, Israel's potential response is becoming more and more delayed. Should the response, if there will be one, to Iran's attack have been immediate? Why are they delaying it? Is it due to international pressure?
Israel did not have a plan in that sense for Iran being the country that presents itself as the legitimate country in the world defending itself. Israel right now is in a multi-front war. We are fighting both against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, against the different proxies of Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen have been firing against us. So that automatic idea that the first reaction is that Israel is going to attack Iran, you can be against Iran, deter Iran, isolate Iran. It's not about the physical attack itself. I'm not waiting for an attack. I'm waiting for Iran yet again to be perceived as the pariah state of the world.
Okay, so moving away from Iran then and looking at its proxies, what do you expect the next steps in Gaza to be? You know, while public opinion claims the war is over, the objectives of the operation seem far from achieved.
Israel has been systematically, over the last 6.5 months, destroying the capability of the terror military army, Hamas, to do the kind of attack they did on October 7th. They did a horrific combined attack against Israel, and that systematic response is to make sure they cannot do that kind of attack again. Hamas is a large terror army. It is part of the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip. It is also the ruler. These are all challenges that we're all aware of. Israel has not stopped attacking them. We are still every single day in the Gaza Strip attacking them, continuing that fight, and that will continue. It hasn't been stopped, and contrary to what people think, there's no ceasefire, and Israel continues to attack those capabilities.
Right, and now shifting to the north, where we are seeing escalations as recent as yesterday. Attacks on the northern border occur daily. Haven't we reached a turning point? You know, is it time to escalate this conflict?
Israel has been escalating, and in this case, I would say, taking the initiative against Hezbollah over the last few months. Israel is not waiting for the Hezbollah attacks. Yes, they still do happen, but Israel is preemptively attacking different facilities, not just in the south of Lebanon, but also further up north in the Bekaa Valley, in other arenas, attacking Revolutionary Guards, as allegedly Israel has done, is part of that northern front. Those are the supply routes. They are the logistics. They're the ones who supply all of the weaponry. So I would argue that Israel is already both changing the rules of the game, not allowing Hezbollah to define the rules of the game. Hezbollah has those capabilities. They will continue to try to define it. And I think right now, Hezbollah is much more reacting than preempting.
Absolutely. And one final question. What covert methods could be used to conclude the fighting in the north and ensure the return of the residents?
Wow, there is no easy answer to how do you get tens of thousands of people to move back to their homes that happen to be adjacent to the Israeli-Lebanese border and be sure that they are secure and that Hezbollah will not be using them as their target aim. I do not have an easy answer for that one. I want to hope that the combined cooperation with the international community, with perhaps the Lebanese government that is not an effective government, and hand in hand, I really do not see how this happens without a more robust Israeli action in the north, part of which we're seeing now.
Colonel Eisen, thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure.
Today marks 195 days that the hostages have spent under Hamas captivity in Gaza, and Qatar has released a shocking statement announcing that they are reevaluating their mediation role between Israel and Hamas. More from William Sharon.
In a significant development, Qatar is reevaluating its mediation role between Israel and Hamas. Qatari Prime Minister El Tahini stated during a press conference in Doha that Qatar is undergoing a thorough reassessment of its involvement. He expressed frustration over what he described as exploitation and criticism of Qatari's mediation efforts by certain politicians. El Tahini referred to a misuse of this mediation for narrow political interests, and this necessitated Qatar to undertake a full evaluation of this role. Qatar, along with the United States and Egypt, has been engaged in behind-the-scenes negotiations aiming to secure a truce in Gaza and the release of Israeli hostages held by Gazan terror groups. However, despite weeks of talks, progress has been elusive, with negotiations stalling rapidly. El Tahini highlighted the sensitive nature of the current stage and Qatar's effort to address the deadlock. Qatar's mediation efforts have faced criticism from various quarters, including Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has voiced concerns over Qatar's alleged failure to pursue Hamas in the hostage talks. In response, Qatar has rebuffed Israel's request for assistance in Gaza's reconstruction, citing Jerusalem's treatment of Qatar throughout the conflict. The relationship between Israel and Qatar has been complex, marked by economic ties and humanitarian aid initiatives. Qatar's financial support for Gaza has drawn criticism, with some arguing it strengthens Hamas at the expense of the Palestinian Authority and Israel's regional allies. As Qatar reassesses its role and tensions simmer in the region, the fate of Gaza and the prospects for peace remain uncertain.
After more than 6 months, the families of the more than 130 hostages in Gaza are frustrated by the lack of progress in hostage negotiations, as is the United States. But it's not Israel to blame. Let's take a closer look at the story. For 200 days, Israeli hostages have been held in captivity by the terror organization Hamas after being kidnapped on October 7th. Despite multiple rounds of negotiations with the U.S. and Qatar as mediators, no deal has been made, despite Israel's repeated generous offers. The families of Israeli hostages have expressed great frustration with the failure to bring home more hostages.
Today is the 200th day that we have hostages kidnapped. People, babies, women, old people, soldiers were kidnapped 200 days ago. My brother-in-law is back there in Gaza, and with 132 more people, it's too much. It needs to be ended.
In response to the failed talks, the U.S. has criticized Hamas for moving the goalposts on negotiations, even when Israel has come to the table with serious offers.
What you have seen over the past few weeks is Hamas move the goalposts. There are demands that they have made. Israel has moved some way to meeting those demands, and Hamas has then changed their demands. And so it certainly does seem like Hamas is more interested in a full-scale regional war.
Hostage negotiations have recently come under scrutiny as Qatar, a mediator, has been accused of bias, given Hamas leaders actually live in Qatar itself. The attention has led to a possible discussion of Hamas leaders relocating from Qatar, but the government of Qatar has rebuffed these statements.
وبالتالي طالما هذا المكتب يؤدي هذا الدور، بمعنى ان هذه جهود الوساطه ما زالت مستمره، فلا مبرر طبعا لانهاء وجود المكتب في الدوحه، ولكن حاليا لا اعتقد يمكننا التعليق على مثل هذه التصريحات اللي تفضلت فيها. بالنسبة لنا كما قلنا قطر ملتزمة بجهود الوساطة ولكنها في مرحلة إعادة.
In addition to accusations of bias over their associations with Hamas, Qatar has also faced recent criticism for their coverage of the Gaza war on Al Jazeera. This week, a Qatari official also made headlines after receiving a standing ovation at the Arab League for stating that October 7th was a prelude and that Jews are murderers of prophets. Well, after weeks of protests against Israel and in some cases in support of Hamas, college campuses seem to be intensifying in their extremist conduct. Columbia University and NYU both have been major battlegrounds with multiple anti-Semitic attacks taking place in recent days. ILTV's Rachel Safdie has more.
Anti-Semitism on U.S. campuses has reached alarming heights, with anti-Israel protests morphing into mass demonstrations under the guise of the Palestinian cause. These protests have escalated to the creation of Freedom Zone encampments, as many protesters conceal their identities with masks or keffiyehs. Banners singling out pro-Israel individuals as Al-Qassam's next targets, a blatant call to kill Jews. At Columbia University, police intervention led to the arrest of about 100 protesters, yet their return raises doubts about the administration's ability to manage the situation. Columbia University President Shafiq faces congressional pressure to resign after misleading testimony about an anti-Semitic professor's presence on campus. The protests have become so aggressive that the rabbi of the university told Jewish students to stay home, and remote learning was instituted. Meanwhile, also in Columbia, Jewish professor Shai Davidai had his university ID blocked and could not enter the university. Similar scenes unfolded over the weekend at Yale as Jewish students were harassed. Sahar Tartak, a Jewish Yale University student journalist, was stabbed in the eye with a Palestinian flag and was hospitalized. On Monday, Yale finally called in police to arrest those who refused to leave a campus plaza. These protests have spread, and the lack of action taken at Columbia has now led to many universities stating encampments and rallies of their own, as students at MIT, Emerson College, Tufts, and the New School set up encampments following in Columbia's footsteps. This rise in anti-Semitism exposed a connection to Qatari money being flooded into these universities. A 2022 report exposed that Qatar contributed $4.7 billion to dozens of academic institutions across the United States. These events paint a stark picture of the growing crises of anti-Semitism on campuses.
While Israel is busy on the war front, the weather is warming up and many Israelis are heading to the beaches. ILTV's Ariella Lahiani has the latest.
Hi Emily, so I'm here at the beach in Tel Aviv and it is boiling today. We're expected to reach around 36 degrees Celsius, definitely the first heat wave of the summer, and the beach is getting more and more busy by the minute. But though the summer energy is definitely here, it's for sure different to previous years. As you can't forget, we are still in the middle of a war. So I'm going to speak to a few people and see how they feel about what's going on.
There's a normality, everyone's kind of adjusted to the new norm. But yeah, everyone in the back of their mind is thinking of the hostages and the war, and all of our friends are going to Miluim and fighting for us. So our friends aren't around us, and yeah, it's sad, but people are just getting on with it, and we'll dance again. The famous saying is definitely happening, and people are embracing that.
The weather is beautiful. I just arrived 2 hours before. It's like normally all the person are in the beach today. We don't think about the war, but in Israel, it's all the time like this. You need to be aware to one day good, one day not good, but in the life.
Everybody are very stressed about it, and we think about it like all the time. But yeah, and it's very, very hard time in Israel.
Like people are afraid of the rockets and from Iran and Gaza, but we have a strong army and strong people, so we can be still like. In a perfect mood, and we're motivated, so that's okay.
Yeah, I agree with him, but it's kinda sucks that you can't like go outside a lot and like go like travel and stuff. Yeah.
I feel less nervous here than I do outside of Israel, so I feel more safe and comfortable here because I know that everyone has our back. Where b'chul, outside of Israel, there's a lot of anti-Semitism, and you don't know who has your back and who doesn't. So I feel safer here than I do when I'm overseas.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at iltv.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. Stay safe and see you next week.